Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely upgrade how your brain studies. Seriously, if you've ever felt like you're just grinding away, putting in massive amounts of effort, and just not seeing the results, you are in exactly the right place.
Just think about it for a second. Have you ever spent hours cramming the night before a big exam? You know the drill. You highlight everything perfectly, you reread your notes until your eyes literally cross, and you honestly feel like you've put in the work. But then, you sit down in the exam room, look at that very first question, and your mind just goes completely blank. You know you studied it, but the information is just gone. It is an incredibly frustrating pain point. It makes so many of us feel, well, a little defeated. But trust me, you are definitely not alone in this.
But here is the really reassuring hook. Your struggles, they aren't a lack of talent, and they definitely aren't a lack of intelligence. As this quote highlights, your brain's hardware is absolutely fine. The processor is lightning fast, the memory capacity is massive. The problem is simply an outdated software issue. The study methods most of us were taught, rereading, highlighting, cramming, it's honestly like trying to run a 10-year-old operating system on a brand new smartphone. It just traps the most hardworking, dedicated people in this vicious cycle of inefficiency.
To fix this, we need an upgrade. So here's our installation menu. First, add search indexes. 2, schedule auto backups. 3, activate multicore. 4, system optimization. And 5, deep app integration. But here is the absolutely critical rule. We have to install these in this exact sequence. One builds perfectly on the next. If you skip a step, the whole system is going to crash.
All right, update 1. Add search indexes.
So listen, if you skip this step, absolutely everything else we talk about today is going to be completely useless. The core of this first update is a psychological concept called active recall. Basically, it means putting the textbook away, literally closing your notes, and actively struggling to retrieve the information straight from your own memory. You know that uncomfortable feeling of staring at a blank piece of paper and really straining your brain to remember? Well, that slightly uncomfortable struggle is exactly when your brain is actually doing the hard work of learning.
What's really interesting here is the metaphor of why this works so well. Rereading your notes is kind of like dumping thousands of photos into your phone's camera roll without putting them into folders or adding any tags. Like, sure, the photos are in there somewhere, but good luck finding a specific one 3 months later during a test. Active recall, on the other hand, is the process of attaching highly searchable tags to those memories. When you force yourself to remember something, your brain flags it. It says, hey, this is important, and it creates an index so that information can actually be pulled up exactly when you need it in the exam room.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive difference that indexing makes. Let's look at this data from a 2008 Purdue University study by Karpik and Roediger. So they had one group read a text 4 times. Then they had another group read it just once, but take 3 active recall tests. A week later, the group that just reread the text retained less than 40% of the info. But the active recall group, they retained a massive 80%. I mean, think about that. They read the text a quarter as much but achieved double the retention. Over time, that translates to a nearly 40-fold difference in long-term memory. It's a total game changer.
Okay, stop right there. Pop quiz. What were the first 3 things we just covered in this explainer over the last few minutes? Seriously, don't look back or rewind. Force your brain to recall the metaphor we just used, the whole outdated OS concept, and that Purdue study. Just by attempting to answer this right now, in this exact moment, you are physically building a search index in your brain in real time. See how that works?
All right, moving on to update 2, schedule auto backups.
So a search index is great, but alone it isn't enough, because it actually fades pretty fast. To understand why backups are so vital, we have to look at spaced repetition. Way back in 1885, a psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered what he called the forgetting curve. He found that within just 24 hours, the human brain forgets about 70% of new information. 70%! And here's the secret. That is not a flaw in your brain. It is actually a natural, highly efficient function to clear out cache memory that your brain thinks you just don't need to survive.
So, if you rely on cramming, you are basically just saving data to a temporary folder. Sure, it might get you through the test the next morning, but it automatically deletes itself right after. Spaced repetition, however, acts as this incredible energy-efficient auto backup. By intentionally recalling information right before you're about to forget it, you're sending a strong signal to your brain going, hey, don't delete this, it's actually important, which securely moves it over to permanent cloud storage. Now, the optimal schedule for these backups was mapped out in a really cool 2006 York University study by the Cepeda research team. They found the golden intervals are 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, and 30 days after you initially learn something. Just 4 targeted 5-minute review sessions at those specific intervals will absolutely crush 5 hours of continuous cramming when we're talking about long-term retention. It's working smarter, not harder.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Update 3 Activate Multicore. Okay, so now that our data is indexed and backed up, it is time to wake up your brain's sleeping processors. And this involves a technique called interleaving. Now here is a fascinating paradox of learning. When your studying feels incredibly easy and smooth, your brain is actually kind of slacking off. Interleaving fixes this by randomly mixing up different subjects or problem types within a single study session, rather than just hammering away at one thing for hours on end.
Think of it this way. If you study math for 3 hours straight, you're running your brain on single-core mode. Your math processor is just humming along, sure, but the rest of your brain is basically asleep, just cruising on autopilot. But when you switch between math, science, and history every 30 minutes, or even just mix different types of math problems together, you activate multi-core processing. Because the problem types are all mixed up, your brain can't just blindly apply a formula over and over. It's constantly forced to decide how to solve a problem, and that is what creates those rich, complex neural connections.
And the results of doing this? They are incredibly surprising. A 2007 math study by Rohrer and Taylor tested students who blocked their practice, so doing all of one problem type at once, versus students who interleaved or mixed their practice. 1 week later, the group that mixed their problem types scored a staggering 43% higher. 43% just by shuffling the order of the questions. That is wild.
All right, Update 4, System Optimization.
Now, I need to give you a critical warning right here. If you do those first 3 steps, active recall, spaced repetition, interleaving, but you're running on a 1% battery, your brain is absolutely going to crash. We need a charging phase. We so often think of sleep as just passive rest, just powering down, but it's actually an incredibly active neurological process. Sleep acts as your system optimizer. While you're sleeping, your brain is super busy moving the day's data from the temporary storage of the hippocampus straight into the permanent storage in the cortex. It's organizing caches, linking concepts together, and actively preventing false, corrupted memories from taking root.
And the data on this is honestly shocking. According to 2017 research by Dr. Matthew Walker, sleeping under 6 hours drops your memory retention of what you literally just learned by over 40%. That means nearly half of your study effort literally evaporates just because you didn't sleep enough. Furthermore, a 2012 Notre Dame study revealed that sleep timing matters immensely too. The absolute best time to study is actually immediately before going to sleep because it instantly triggers that permanent transfer process.
Which brings us to Update 5, Deep App Integration.
This is the final, ultimate game changer that rewrites your brain's processing speed entirely. This upgrade relies on a concept formulated back in 1972 by Craik and Lockhart called elaborative encoding. Think of it kind of like taking a photo on your smartphone that automatically integrates and links to your map, your calendar, and your notes apps all at the exact same time. By deeply processing new information and explicitly linking it to things you already know, your own personal experiences, or core reasons, you create this dense, rich web of connections. So when you tug on one little string of memory during an exam, the whole integrated web comes right up with it.
Now, there are 3 highly actionable ways to build these deep integrations. First, always ask the why questions. Don't just blindly memorize a fact. Figure out exactly why it's true. Second, create your own personal analogies, like comparing the brain to a computer's operating system. And third, teach the material to someone else. In fact, a 2014 Washington University study showed that merely intending to teach someone else drastically increases your memory scores. Taking on the mindset of a teacher forces your brain to organize the information flawlessly.
So, the crucial point is how you put this all together into a highly practical daily routine. Here is your new setup. Step 1. Use active recall. Literally close the book and struggle for 5 minutes. Step 2. Schedule your spaced repetition on days 1, 3, 7, and 30. Step 3. Activate multicore by mixing up your subjects every 30 minutes. Step 4. Optimize by sleeping 6 or more hours, ideally right after you study. And Step 5. Integrate by teaching others what you learn.
Which brings us to one final provocative question for you. Are you ready to install your brain's new OS today? Seriously, don't wait. As soon as this explainer ends, I challenge you to close the screen, grab a blank piece of paper, and spend just 5 minutes actively recalling absolutely everything you can remember from what we just covered. That little bit of struggle, that is the exact moment your upgrade begins. Thanks so much for learning with us.